but I was learning very simply to obey God's voice. So here's how it played out in real time. I was preaching a sermon a few weeks into this time with hearing God's voice. And this is back when I wore a suit and a tie, and it was pretty formal. This was in the 90s. And I stayed on the podium when I spoke with a big pulpit. And as I was preaching, and I had my sermon notes in front of me, that voice that I would hear when I was out walking in the neighborhood broke through while I'm preaching the word and said, "Take your tie off, your necktie." And I became very confused a little. Well, not confused, but just I couldn't make rationality of it. So I kept preaching, and the voice came again. "Take your tie off." Well, I knew that voice because remember, every day he'd been speaking to me. Run down the street, skip down the street, walk backwards, stop, go in a circle. And I'd been obeying this voice, so I knew the voice. It's just like your parents' voice, your mom's voice when you're a kid. You could be outside playing with your friends and your name is called. You know immediately that's your mom or that's your dad calling you. When you learn God's voice, it doesn't matter where you're at. You're going to know it's God's voice. So I had a choice there to obey God's voice or disobey God's voice. I chose to obey. Without explanation, as I was preaching the word, I simply reached up and undid my tie and pulled it off my neck and put it on the podium without addressing it. People may have wondered, why is he doing that? But I didn't even know, I didn't have an explanation other than God told me, and I didn't feel appropriate to say, "Hey, everyone, God's telling me to take my tie off right now." So I didn't. After the service, I came down from the podium after we prayed. There was a new family there that day, and they came forward to meet me. Very nice couple. And they said, "We found our church home today." Every pastor wants to hear that. I said, "Wonderful. What makes you realize this is your church home?" So the lady began to talk. She said, "We won't tell you what church we came from because we're not critical people. But our pastor did not know the voice of God. And so he was not able to lead us effectively into spiritual growth. And we said, Lord, lead us to a place where the pastor knows your voice." She said, "So while you were preaching, I really liked the worship. I liked the people, they were friendly." She said, "But I so wanted God to speak to my pastor. And if you were the new pastor," she said, I privately prayed, "God, would you tell him right now to take his necktie off?" Can you believe that? And I said, "You prayed that?" She said, "Well, I had to pray it 2 times. Remember, I told you the story. 2 times God spoke to me in that sermon, "Take your necktie off." Because of that obedience, because of that simple prayer of that lady and me removing that necktie, not only did we gain a wonderful family that stayed for years in the church and worked and poured tithe and offering into that fellowship, but it also caused me to begin to hear God, not only out on the street in my walks, but in the house of God, on the pulpit, with the people of God. It was a turning point. And so I want to tell you,